Right to that explosive grand jury decision, no indictment for a New York City police officer in the death of Eric Garner from a chokehold.
Protests all over the country last night. People, many of them want to have their voices heard. And ABC's Ron Claiborne joins us now with the latest. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning to you, Robin. This is the site of that violent confrontation last July that ended in the death of Eric Garner. Overnight, many people out here both stunned and angry about that grand jury decision.
Overnight, hundreds of people pouring into New York's Times Square to protest the grand jury's stunning decision. In Grand Central Terminal, hundreds more laying down on the floor in what they called a die-in. Others laying down on a New York City highway.
This is stupid.
Police officers arresting dozens. Protests growing nationwide from Oakland, California, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C. Overnight, the family of Eric Garner expressing their grief.
How could we put our trust in the justice system when they fail us like this?
It was back on July 17th that police tried to arrest Garner for allegedly selling loose cigarettes. The dramatic confrontation videotaped by bystanders. First, Garner resisting their attempt to arrest him.
Don't touch me, please. Don't touch me.
Then officers finally grabbing onto the 300-plus-pound suspect. Officer Pantaleo seen with his forearm around Garner's throat and wrestling him to the ground.
I can't breathe.
Garner, a father of 6, pronounced dead at a nearby hospital just minutes later. The coroner's report said his death was from compression of his neck and chest. This morning, the U.S. Justice Department is launching an investigation into possible civil rights violations against Officer Pantaleo. And Bill de Blasio, New York City's mayor, urged peaceful protest while sounding a personal note about his own biracial son.
We've had to literally train him, as families have all over this city for decades, in how to take special care in any encounter he has with the police officers who are there to protect him.
Officer Pantaleo, of course, will still face possible federal charges that I mentioned, also a civil suit and a departmental investigation by the NYPD that could end up, George, costing him his job, but no criminal charges here.
Okay, that's from the grand jury. Ron Claiborne, thanks very much. Let's talk about it now with Dan Abrams. A lot of people look at that videotape and say, how could they not indict?
Yeah, so what happened here is that they weren't able to get 12 of the 23 grand jurors to say that they thought there was probable cause to indict. People are going to look at that, they're going to say, chokeholds aren't allowed by the NYPD, so how could there not be an indictment in this case? It's important to remember as a legal matter that just because it's not permitted by the NYPD doesn't necessarily make it a crime. And you heard Ron just talking about that, the fact the NYPD is going to do its own investigation here. But I will tell you, having that videotape, being able to watch it, I think there's an argument to be made that there was a stronger case for an indictment here, even than in Ferguson, where there you had conflicting testimony about exactly what happened. Here you had the videotape of what happened. And, you know, as a result, you're seeing a lot of outrage.
Dan, you bring up the Ferguson case, and a lot of people are talking about the differences. No video there. As you said, there was video here, and all this talk about putting body cameras on police officers, a lot of people, especially on social media, are saying, what difference is that going to make?
Yeah, and this is going to be case by case, but the one thing I would say is don't give up on the video cameras. They're really important. I think it's a great thing that police officers in New York City and I'm sure increasingly around the country are going to be using these body cameras. We want to be able to see exactly what is happening. It is better for us as citizens. I think it is better for the police, both sides, to be able to have that video evidence so we can now have a conversation about what happened in the Garner case and be able to see exactly what happened, as opposed to what happened in Ferguson, where there's a whole dispute about exactly what occurred there.
Let's talk about what's next right now. You've got Eric Holder saying there's going to be a federal civil rights investigation.
Yeah, nothing's going to happen from the federal civil rights investigation. The standard is much higher for a federal case than even in state, but there probably will be a civil lawsuit.
Right, a lawsuit from
and potentially
the
a very strong one.
And hard to believe that the officer is going to return to the force?
Hard to believe because it seems pretty clear that he violated, at the very least, NYPD procedure.
Okay, Dan Abrams, thanks very much.